Would a higher purchase price increase the assessed value and property tax? Yes. So the assessed value is what the government, the county, whoever's charging your property taxes is looking, they're assessing the value of your property and saying, hey, you owe us this percentage of your assessed property value in taxes each year. That's what you owe us, right? So that if you have a higher purchase price, usually when they assess the value of the property, they're assessing it until it gets sold, and whatever the new purchase price is, you can guarantee it's going to be really close to that purchase price, what their assessed value is of the property. Unless you buy it at like a super cheap discount, that's the only time where it's off, and it's because they're going to charge you more than the property than what you bought it for. But if you're buying, if it's assessed at $500,000 and you buy it for $700,000, you can guarantee within a year or two they're going to get you right at that $700,000 or higher amount. Because you're saying, well, someone bought it at $700,000, that's the value of the property, obviously. So we're going to charge taxes based on that. So then why would you ever even offer a higher purchase price, right? If you are leveraging creative financing, if you are doing traditional financing, all you can really negotiate is, hey, this is the purchase price that I'm willing to offer. They have it listed for $500,000. You can offer $500,000. You can lowball at $450,000. You can say, hey, I'm going above asking at $550,000. Do you want to accept my offer? That's really all you can negotiate. There's nothing like the bank is the one saying, here's the down payment that you owe us, 25%, 20%, whatever. Here's the interest rate that we're allowing that you can do. Here's the closing cost. You can lower the interest rates by paying more of closing. You can pay points to reduce your interest rate, which is more closing costs. Basically, just paying that interest up front to then lower the interest rate. It mathematically doesn't usually does not make sense to go that route. Very rare scenarios doesn't make sense. The reason why I buy the majority of my deals creatively financed is you have a lot more to negotiate than just the purchase price. If you are going creative, you can negotiate a ton of things, and you can leverage the purchase price to then get things that add more value to you. And let me explain. When I told you why I'm buying properties because they're good investments. So I'm making sure that they're cash flowing, and that justifies the cash flow I'm getting, justifies the entry cost it took to buy that deal, right? So that metric is cash on cash return. So I'm only looking at cash flow and cash on cash return. Nowhere in there am I mentioning purchase price. What is the purchase price that I'm buying the property? So one thing that you can do to make better terms, like if it's seller finance and they want $500,000 and they're looking for 5% interest rate, and that gives you an 8% cash on cash return, right? Whatever's left over in profit divided by your entry costs. And I'll just say 10% down, like 50K down, 10% down. What I normally do in those scenarios is I'll say, hey, the only way I can increase my cash on cash return is to increase my cash flow, right? Increase my monthly profit or decrease my entry costs. It's usually pretty tough to decrease your entry costs, the money you're paying to the seller, the agent, if there is one, a wholesaler, your closing costs, whatever. You can negotiate that a bit, but the best thing from my analysis on thousands of deals is that it's almost better to try to increase your cash flow by reducing your debt payments. You can't really reduce your debt payment when it comes to a traditional deal, because the only way you reduce the debt payment is to just put a bunch more money down, increase your down payment so there's less loan, so you have a lower payment. But usually that does not make sense. Like mathematically, it doesn't make sense. That's not like the ideal route. That doesn't generally increase your cash on cash return. So what you can do is instead is, since I don't really care about purchase price, what you can do is, and let me caveat that. Of course I care about purchase price. I'm not buying a $500,000 property at $1 million, but I'll give or take 10,000, 15,000, whatever, a couple percent on it if it allows me to make a bunch more money while I'm owning the property, if I'm able to cash flow a bunch more. So the example is, if I'm buying it for $500,000, 10% down, and then they're offering 5% interest rate, and it's an 8% cash on cash return. So that's a lot of numbers. I apologize for that. To increase my cash on cash return, one of the things I would do is say, hey, I know you want the 5% interest rate. I can't do that. Like if I do that, I'm only getting 8% cash on cash return. I need 12% or higher. So the only way to do that is to increase my cash flow by reducing my monthly debt payment. The best way to do that is to lower the interest rate. So you go from 5% to 3% or 2% or even 0%, which we have plenty of 0%, 2%, 3%. Like you don't need to do the same thing banks are offering or close to what banks are offering. You can literally buy properties like we do at 0% interest, but there has to be a give and take. I can't ask them to go from 5% to 0%, even though that helps my numbers work, doesn't mean they're willing to do it. But then what I tend to do is say, well, what if I give you an extra $10,000 purchase price or an extra You can give them more down payment, which I don't prefer to do, give them more money up front. What I prefer to do is say, hey, what if I just build your interest into the purchase price? So it's going from 5% to 0%, allowing me to cash flow a lot more. I got my 12% or higher cash on cash return. However, I'm now, instead of buying it for 500,000, I'm buying it for 520,000, 525,000, whatever. We're paying interest over the life of ownership on this property, right? We're just baking it into the purchase price. They're locking that in, but I'm able to cash flow a bunch more money. And the rationale is, as a phrase my mentor Pace says, equity will come and go, but the cash will always flow. So like when you're buying a property, you're buying it for the cash flow day one, but the equity is going to change. Sometimes things happen in the market, properties go down in value. We saw that when interest rates went up and there were less buyers, interest rates went for, or property values were flat or went down for a while. But then over long enough periods of time, on average, it's 5% every year it appreciates. It doesn't mean every single year it's 5% from 100,000 to 105,000, right? And then 5% of that, it all compounds. So I don't know what the math is after that, but it doesn't work like linearly like that. It's not every single year it literally does that, but over long enough periods of time, the average increase is around 5%, right? Hopefully that makes sense. So if you're saying, okay, I'll give you an extra $25,000 to buy the property on the purchase price, but I'm able to make much higher cash on cash return and get into this deal, that is why you would go that route, to then increase your cash on cash return and get that deal done and have way better returns for you and your partners. Although that means at the end, when you pay off the loan or there's a balloon, you're going to give them an extra $25,000 than you would have originally. But you made way more in cash flow. And there's a massive benefit when your interest rates are lower. It's not only that you're making more in cash flow, but you're wasting less on interest. So every single monthly payment is paid. Part of it, it's the same payment every single month. Part of it goes towards the principal of the loan, paying down the debt. And then part of it just goes towards paying interest. Kind of wasted money. I mean, you got a tax benefit, but there's really no value for interest besides getting the deal done or getting your financing from the bank or getting the seller happy because that's what, they're getting interest on their money. You bake that into the front of your purchase, like the purchase price itself, reduce your interest so that your cash flow is higher and you're getting a higher cash on cash return. And every monthly payment is now going more towards principal, less towards interest than it would if you had a higher interest rate. Hopefully that explains why you would do something like that. Why would you offer more than they want, right? We're not just forcing deals. We're not just willy-nilly throwing numbers out there. It has to make sense. Like the analysis has to justify to make sense for it. And like I said, you don't want to buy a $500,000 property for $750,000. And now you have, it take 20 years just to break even on that. You don't want to do something like that, but something reasonable, a couple percentage is a very good strategy to implement if it means you're going to get way higher cash flow and cash on cash return. But yes, the caveat is you would pay, if you have a higher purchase price, you'd have a higher assessed value for taxes. So you pay higher property taxes. The difference is probably like, if you're doubling the property value, you're going to double the taxes. But if you're going from $500,000 to $525,000, that's going to be like almost an insignificant or a very small amount. Cause it's like 1% of the assessed value is what you're going to pay in taxes. So if it's $100,000, you'll pay $1,000 on taxes. That's not actually how the numbers work. It depends on where your property is located, what state it's located in, what city, what county, what city. Everywhere is different. So I'm just saying that, give you an example. But if it's 1%, went from 100,000 purchase price to 125,000, I would not go 25% over. But 100,000 to 110,000, you're going from $1,000 of property taxes, right? 1% to $1,100 of property taxes. That extra $100 that you're paying for the year, you're going to save a lot more by going from 5% to 0%. And I can actually show you guys that if you'd like me to. Let me show you guys that. And then I have a few other questions in here that I'd be happy to answer. So let me pull up my spreadsheet. Once again, this is the Super Creative Finance Calculator that all the super investors get access to. If you want access to it and you're not a super investor calculator, or you're not a super investor, reach out to me. We can figure out ways to get you access. Let me see. All right, let's get a copy of it, and then I will start screen sharing. And I want to just show you that exact example that we were talking about. Make a copy. I will start screen sharing now. Let me get rid of this text so you guys get to see as much of it as possible. See, I'm telling you, I'm getting better every week. I mean, I'm not great yet, but I'm getting better every single week at this thing. I'm not even in my freaking home office right now. We're doing this. It's amazing. All right, there it is. All right, yes, you can see my screen. Perfect. So let's zoom out a little bit. Okay, so we're going to go through that scenario. We're going to say a $500,000 purchase price. Oh, give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Or a comment. Or don't give me a thumbs up. Drop a comment if you can see it. Perfect. There we go. All right. So I'm going to zoom in actually to show you. So if you have a property, let's zoom in even more because we're going to just focus on the debt, the creative debt here. We're going to just do a seller finance loan. So it's $500,000, right? Down payment is 10% or $50,000. There's no sub-2 loans, it's a straight seller finance deal. So it's $450,000 at, we said 5%, 30 years. So that's $24,570 a month just towards the seller finance loan. No taxes, no insurance. We're not dealing with any of that right now. What we are going to deal with is, okay, so I put a section in the calculator for this information. So if you go down to this section, you can literally just copy and paste this info in here, and let's see what that looks like. So we're going to copy and paste all this stuff, I believe, until the monthly payment. Sorry, I'm so zoomed in, I'm like lost. There we go. Your entry cost in this example, they're just all made up, is $95,000. Excellent. We'll copy that. I want to show you guys a comparison. And this is what I do a lot of times. If I do a higher purchase price at a lower interest rate, what's that look like? If I do a higher purchase price but it's 0% interest rate, what's that look like? And we can actually see that in real time together. So your cash flow in this scenario, let's make sure this thing cash flows and has cash on cash return. So this is very negative because this is a really big loan. So I just make this much higher just to make it make sense for this deal. Perfect. $474, 6% cash on cash return. That is a perfect scenario for us to see what this deal would look like once we change the numbers around. We're not going to worry about property value and all that stuff this time. We can even hide everything after that to clean this up. All we're going to look at is cash flow and cash on cash return. So let's hide this stuff. The reason for it is your property is going to appreciate much more in value. I just don't want to go. It'll justify the higher increase. So hide those rows. Total profit, we'll just disregard that. All right, we're going to hide that. Perfect. All right. So we're going to just go through this scenario. We're going to adjust the purchase price, right? And then check the cash on cash return. And remember, with the purchase price in this scenario, it's 10% down payment. So if this goes up, that means our purchase price is going to go up. So in this scenario, we're going to say now $525,000. And we're going to give them $25,000 more, right? Our down payment is 10% of that. So it's $2,500 more. So that means our entry costs are higher. And our loan would be higher, but we were able to negotiate 2.5% instead because we gave them $25,000, go from 5% straight to 2.5%. Let's see what that looks like. Let's copy that. So we have $525,000. Let's get the entry costs. We're going to just get the data now, and then we'll actually compare it because it'll be too hard to try to do all of it at one time. And then cash flow. Look at that. And then in this other scenario, let's say we actually do $550,000. So we're going to even higher. We're giving $50,000 more than they asked for, but that's so we can get a lower interest rate. Let's see what that looks like in this scenario. And not only like you're getting the loan benefits too. Maybe I should do that so you can truly see what I'm talking about. You know, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna show you guys what the property values would be too in those time spans so you can really see. So let's go back to the 500. or let me finish the 550 and then we'll go back to it. So 1040, no. So we got the 99,325. Sorry guys, I know I'm like moving around like crazy, but let's get the cash flow and cash on cash. Okay, so now we're gonna do property value in 10 years. So property value in 10 years, and then principal paid in 10 years, balloon left in 10 years, equity in 10 years. So property value in 10 years, we're gonna go to the using other people's money. Let's say property value, so this is at the 5-year mark. We'll say at the 10-year mark. But this is based on a long-term analysis. So it's, if you go into the calculator, you're going to see we have appreciation of the property at only 3%, where I said it's on 5% on average. We're only going 3% because I am a conservative investor. I don't want to assume it's the best case scenario and that's the only way I make money. That's not the way I do things. Principal paid in 10 years, balloon left in 10 years, equity in 10 years. So I think we can get that if we go to the balloon section and we say 10 years, perfect. Principal paid, interest paid, balloon left. Perfect. So this is how much loan is left. So this is assuming in 10 years we have to be done with this loan. Oh no, it's principal paid, balloon left, and then equity. So principal is 165, and then 328, 625. Oops. Oopsies. Sorry, I'm doing all this on a laptop without a keyboard. So your equity is 336,000. All right, so now let's go back and do it for 525. And that should be so $525,000, right? We're going to get the, and that is going to be at the 2.5% interest rate. So now you have interest. It's not just the principal, right? So you paid 100 in 10 years, you paid 120,000 towards principal, but you also spent $103,000 in interest rate, even at 2.5% interest rate. So it's important to understand why we would go this route and even overpay $50,000. We just saved $100,000 in interest. That's definitely why. And you could even increase the value and you'll see how it still make more sense. And then property value, 705. Oh yeah, we're going to stick with the same property value because the property value in this scenario is based on the, we'll stick with the same 500,000. So we'll do that last for all three of these. It's based on the purchase price, but yeah, so we'll fix that piece. And then, so now let's go the 5% route, 5% at 500,000. So we have, now you spent $205,000 on interest and only $83,000 paying down the debt because of that interest. That's insane. That's what this ties literally back into everything I was just talking to you about. Balloon payment. Oh, I think I already had the right numbers in here. So then let's do the property value in 10 years. Okay, we're going to put that for all of these. All right. So look, in scenario one, we're purchasing it at $500,000 with a 10% down payment or $50,000. There's a loan of $450,000, interest rate of 5%, and your monthly payment is $2,415.70. Your entry cost is $95,198. There's going to be your lowest entry cost and your lowest purchase price and your lowest down payment, right? Because you have a lower purchase price and it's a percentage of that. And then the monthly payment is not always necessarily the lowest, but because of interest rate, it's going to make it higher. Even though the loan amount is lower, the 450 versus 472 and 495, the interest makes the monthly payment so much higher. And your cash flow was 474 and 6%. Not only that, you have $360,000 of equity, $306,000 of equity because you bought it at less value. You bought it for $50,000 cheaper in this scenario. So you're buying it. Your property value is going to be the same in 10 years, but you are buying it and paying on that debt, even though a lot's going towards interest, you have equity, $306,000. So your total cash flow is $56,916. So that's your monthly profit. Your total profit, when you account for the property appreciating value and you sell it in 10 years, is $363,000. Total return on investment, $382, right? And this is the scenario that we talked about originally. Let's go to the extreme end on the other side. You buy it at $550,000 at 0% interest, right? Your down payment's a little bit lower. Which means your loan is also a little bit, no, your down payment is higher, right? Because it's 10% of 550. Your loan is higher, but your monthly payment is massively less because your interest rate is much less. Your entry costs are also a little bit higher because you have a higher down payment. And your cash flow is from 474 to 1515 by going from 5% rate to 0% rate. Your cash return goes from 6% to 18.3%. But I bought it at $50,000 more. Yes. But you see why this is a strategy that you would implement? Your property is the same value in 10 years that would have been regardless of how you bought it. But instead of paying $83,000 and roughly $84,000 towards principal, you paid $165,000 for principal because every single payment you made was paying on the principal of the debt, which means your balloon is also less. Even though you bought it at $550, the amount remaining is lower because this is all going towards paying this down. Where a lot of this we saw over like $100,000 was going towards interest. So you've developed more equity and you got way more cash flow. So overall, you got more cash flow and you have more equity, right? So your total return on investment is much higher. Your cash flow is higher, your equity is higher, so your cash on cash return is higher, and your ROI is higher, even though you bought it at $50,000 more and your entry was a couple grand more as well. Does this make sense why this was such a valuable strategy to implement? And that this is why it's like so important to focus on the terms. Can I make it cash flow and make it make sense in the short term and in the long term, even if it means buying it at a slightly higher purchase price? This is a 10% higher purchase price than this one originally. And you see why I would go this route, right? A lot of these numbers were fake, the rental income and all that. You still have to make sure the rent justifies all of this. But just to give you an example of why this is a phenomenal strategy to implement to get these returns. All right. Let me see if there's any final questions on the topic. You're right, Kent. Amazing. 100%. Neil asked some questions. So Neil, these are great questions. Throw them in Wealth Through Real Estate. Throw them in Super Investors. You're not a Super Investor, so you can't throw it in there, right? We go Super Investors questions first. If there's less than 3, then I will do the remainder to Wealth Through Real Estate community. Put them in the Wealth Through Real Estate community. We go in and we grab those questions and I answer them live for you guys here. I just need it a little bit easier. So Cedric asked a good question just to clarify. Why does the property value stay the same after 10 years? Because the property is just whatever you bought it at, we're just assuming that it's appreciating 5%, or in this scenario, 3% a year from the property value. So even though we bought it at 550 and it should have been bought at 500, doesn't mean we should be appreciating from 550 and above, right? Like it was worth 500. We just overpaid for it to get much better debt. We got it at 0% instead of 5%. And you saw the reasons why we would overpay $50,000 or 10% higher, right? And the property still appreciates the exact same amount. It only goes to the same value, but you get much better cash flow and cash on cash return. And you saw you get even more equity as well because of the fact that more of your payment is going towards paying on the debt, less is getting wasted towards interest. All right, y'all. So remember, please, if you like this stuff, please follow me on Instagram. I'm here to help you become financially free. That's one of my biggest goals. I was sharing with you guys how I make passive income. You see here how I make active income. Sometimes I like to put my money into investments and just get returns on that. If you want to do that, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help you find situations like that makes sense for you and your investing goals and how much capital you have currently available. If you want to be active just like me, you're more than welcome to do that. We have the free Wealth Through Real Estate community, primarily catered towards lenders, bird dogs, and capital connectors, but we also have plenty of wholesalers and real estate investors in there, or my Super Investors community where I'm training you very specifically how to analyze deals just like this, to get a whole database of creatively financed deals, to be able to analyze them masterfully just like this, to have the systems and operations you need to maximize returns and minimize risk, as well as how to raise the money so you're buying them using none of your own credit and none of your own money. It's literally like insane. And you've seen what I've been able to do in 4 years. I want to help you do the same, ideally even faster. With all that being said, check me out on Instagram. YouTube, if you're watching this live on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. We're doing this every single week. And that's all. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate you.